And welcome back to Digital Trends Live with our CES 2020 coverage here in Las Vegas. And we thank everybody who's been joining us here throughout all of this broadcast, all 3 days of it, whatever you're watching, dropping your comments, your questions, whatever you want to bring up as we go throughout the show. And it is now time for another edition of Tech Briefs. And that is where we have our weekly segment here on Digital Trends, but now daily during CES, where myself is joined by Ken Yeung from Flipboard. Hello, Ken.
Hello.
And our special guest, Maude Garrett.
Oh, hey. So I'm so glad to be involved in Tech Briefs. Now, you guys, obviously, if you have been tuning in every single day, these guys do a weekly podcast with the lovely Flipboard and Digital Trends combining forces. But we're now in the same room together. You two have actually known each other for a while, but only been in the same room this week at this CES, and that's so beautiful.
Packing it all into one week, one magical week.
Exactly.
What's been going on here, and everybody's getting to witness it right now here on screen, and we thank you for that. All right, let's do this. Let's talk about some tech. Let's get down to this. So let's talk about some most exciting developments, I would say, from CES this year. It's always hard to unpack everything that went into a CES, but just general impressions, and it's technically still going, but general impressions so far. Ken, I know you've been out on the floor. You've been interviewing and talking to a lot of people as well. What were your thoughts? Let's go to televisions.
So television, I mean, I think the thing everyone was talking about was 8K, and certainly there was no shortage of 8K televisions out there. I think in terms of people comprehending what the potential is of 8K, I mean, we're still trying to figure out, you know, we're seeing adoption of 4K right now. Now you want to advance it to 8K. I mean, but what's significant is that these 8K televisions are certainly not cheap. You know, you look at LG's nice little, I mean,
The roll-up.
The roll-up and the roll-down. I mean, the roll-up one was estimated to cost about like $60,000. I mean,
right.
Like, I guess I just don't have to, you know, eat for the next year just for this television. But I mean, it's really
How much food do you eat in 1 year to make
$60,000 worth of
$60,000?
wow.
I don't know. It depends if I have to feed
You're a
family
hungry boy.
or you know,
Just doing
orphans.
the math on it. It's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah, it's staggering. But anyway.
But I mean, but you figure it's like that's a year's worth of salary for some people.
It is,
and,
yeah.
and
Just
it's
for a
like,
television
And
that
these are
rolls.
not like small TVs. These are like 65 inches or larger. But I think in general, I mean, but as you walk down through the show floors, everybody has 8K televisions now. They're starting to tout them. TCL, LG, and Samsung, and Panasonic and Sony. But what I think is to help separate the difference is how do these companies position? How do you view these displays that are in your home? I mean, these are it's always going to be in the room that everyone gathers in. But how do they want it to be? Is it noticeable? Here's a television. Like, where's the TV? It's right in front of you. This big, giant, bulky thing. Or in the case of Samsung, they want it to blend into the room.
Right.
So you know, Samsung's whole display it looks like, as you walk by, it looks like a portrait gallery. You know, and in a museum, you're like, whoa, this is really, really trippy. But LG's is like, look, this is this masterful display that kind of is more portable and gets out of the way. I mean, but it's less of a blend into your environment versus just, you know, compact, like if you have a smaller place.
Let's weigh in on that. As consumers, we have televisions. Would you rather your television have a frame and really, you know, address itself as I am your television, or would you like something that's a little bit more seamless with zero bezel?
I like the 8K zero bezel. I mean, as far as the 8K side, I guess that's, you know, neither here nor there when it comes down to it. But as far as the bezel-less idea, I love the idea that it just kind of blends into the background and then becomes a television when you want. Otherwise, it's just part of the artwork on the wall.
Yeah.
I like that idea of screens, I think, just to kind of change it up a little bit. I mean, and not
It's
take
very
up so much
sci-fi,
space.
though. It's like a sci-fi thing where you would, you know, whether
And
you're
maybe
watching.
that's part of why I like it,
Yeah,
too.
yeah. You're just like, oh, screen. It's like, where's your television? And you might think like, oh, there's this nice little image of flower or nature, and then all of a sudden you're like, boom, turn on TV, and you're like, whoa. What is this?
Can we just spend, I know you can kind of see the wall behind Greg right now, but what if this giant wooden wall was actually a facade and the wood kind of melts away and it's really a television?
Wait,
Surprise.
it isn't?
Nah, it didn't work.
Oh, yeah, right? Come on, CES, step it up.
All right.
We expect more.
Well, I think I've just watched Goodfellas too many times where I want the television that's going to, like, the wall's going to move back and the TV's going to pop up. So that's kind of where I'm going, I think, with all of this. That's the tech I want, 70s. All right, so let's go to something else. Let's talk about foldable devices. Certainly something that last year, we've talked a lot about foldable devices last year being kind of a big thing. Like, were we going to see the phone? We did see a phone. Now we've had multiple devices come out that are foldable, including laptops. We've got more phones on the way. So really, I feel like it's a big year for foldable, and that 2020 is going to be a big year for it.
Yeah, I don't think there was any disagreement that foldables would just be a one-year wonder. I think it's certainly going to be.
There are some people who disagree with that, though.
Well, I mean, but I think it's the way it was executed in 2019 was kind of really caught people off guard, especially in terms of how Samsung's Galaxy Fold actually that whole launch process really got botched. But I think this year you're going to see you're starting to see more potential in terms of just in terms of how that technology is amongst the screen, right? So yeah, like Samsung's coming out with their Galaxy Fold 2 reportedly on February 11th at their Unpacked event, but they didn't really make any mention of it at this year's CES. I mean, certainly at their Samsung City booth, this monstrosity of a booth, and they have like a little area that's for their mobile devices. So they do, and you can look at the Samsung Galaxy Fold. I actually did see somebody at a party last night that actually had the Galaxy Fold in the wild. It was pretty trippy. I was like, wait, what is that? But you start to see more of the expansion. Like
did
TCL
work for Samsung?
I don't think they did. I think it was just an enthusiast, which is like great. You know, you're willing to spend that $2,000 on it. But that's telling because foldables are. I mean, they're pricier than a premium phone, right? You look at the iPhones or the Galaxies, but coincidentally, you look at TCL, which announced concept phones, foldable devices. They're trying to price that for around $500. So that's a really big hit against the foldable devices. I mean, obviously you have to compare the specs. TCL would be a little bit more mid-range than the premium ones. But then you see them branching, foldable devices branching, again, as you mentioned, into foldable laptops. And I made the mistake of bringing it up to somebody at Lenovo at a party. I'm like, hey, can I see the foldable tablet? They're like, no, it's a foldable laptop. I'm like, it's a laptop? But don't laptops already fold? They're like, no, you'll want to see this. So I went and looked at it, and I'm like, okay. I get what they're talking about. I mean, it's not like a traditional laptop. It's basically a tablet, but it's just the way that they've managed to figure out the screen without having the crease. I don't know whether or not that's going to be an applicable use case, but it's certainly a nice take on the laptop.
Well, Kenneth, I took the liberty to ask our viewers at the moment, if you are watching on YouTube, we've been weighing in the foldable phones or tech, yay or nay. Guys, a resounding nay happening in the... I'd get it for a phone, but not a laptop. Nathan was like, absolutely nay, it's a gimmick. Other people are saying, there's so much more chance of the screens, like more screens, more chance for it to break and to smash, and they're very, very delicate. And would a folded screen develop a crease? That
is an issue that has come up before. I think a lot of them are working on that. The first Galaxy Fold iteration did have some of those issues where it was developing the Fold. It also had a whole bunch of a crease, rather, and it had a bunch of issues. But it seems like most of that is fairly worked out mechanically, at least as far as what we've seen. But again, we're just getting these foldables really in the wild for the first time. Ken just saw one for the first time yesterday. So, we're not really seeing a lot where we've seen a lot of wear and tear on them. One thing, though, that I do like just on the foldable thing, I know we've got to move on to the next topic, is just the TCL getting into it. That, to me, is a very good development. Just a company like that, not necessarily them, but somebody who's going to come in at a lower cost, which is going to bring the cost down for everybody else, because if they can do it right, you really can't continue to charge $2,000 if there's a $500 version that's almost as good. I mean, it's got to be tremendously worse in order to keep that premium price of $2,000. So I just think it's good overall for the industry.
But then you also see a lot more use cases there, and then of course now you have Intel that also touted that as a foldable device as well. Dell is getting, I believe Dell is also getting into that space.
Yeah, we did.
So there's a lot more of innovation to come. So we'll see.
Let's talk about something else that we haven't discussed a whole lot here on the show, but it's the whole battle between the Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa, because that was something going into CES. Smart homes are such an integral part of CES, and pretty much all of technology is becoming integrated. And these are the two leading voice assistant systems that people are going with, and they are really fighting it out. Google had a huge presence here at CES, but Amazon also was incorporated into quite a few devices. And then, Ken, I know you actually saw some of the Alexa incorporation. What did you see with that?
So, so I think it's similar to with televisions. You got to look at how these companies positioned the use cases for their technology. So Amazon Alexa, they actually have several I guess let's call them booths at CES. One main one for more of their consumer products, with things like Ring and more of the smart home type of things. But they've announced a whole bunch of new integrations with Alexa. Of course, previous years they announced Alexa in vehicles and everything like that. But notably, they have announced Alexa in the Lamborghini. So there's actually a booth, there's actually two booths where there's a parked Lamborghini. There's somebody inside the Lamborghini, and literally it just says this Amazon Alexa and Lamborghini, and it's just a nice car right dead in center.
Lambo Alexa.
Yeah.
Got it.
Probably. Yeah, but
that person also owns a $60,000
right.
television
yeah,
too. So.
Yeah, but they also have an automotive in the North Hall is where a lot of the car technology is with electric vehicles and everything like that. They have a gigantic booth for Amazon Automotive Services. So Amazon's certainly not shying away from getting into vehicles. They also announced that they're going to be partnering with Exxon. So Alexa will somehow be integrated within at the gas pumps. Of course.
Oh, nailed it right there.
That's good.
This is all I do.
Copyright
I just sit here and I combine.
Copyright.
But
and that's how I stay relevant.
But I think it's one thing that people that they still have to figure out is like the privacy issue and the security issue in terms of using Alexa at the pump.
Yeah, I would not be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
That's actually the big thing happening in the chat right now, especially if you're watching on YouTube. I asked them Alexa or Google. I love that Bixby is not even a contender with this one. What even is Bixby? I've never. Anyway,
Bixby.
The stats at the moment is that the Google Assistant has 500 million users. That is 500 million, whereas Alexa only has 100 million users, even though there are more Google devices. And that is very reflective in these comments here. 1 in 5 use Alexa, the other 4 use Google. But people are really kind of worried about privacy.
Yeah.
Some of them are saying, I don't want to use them because I want to have my privacy to myself.
Which is a huge, huge concern. I would say that's another big theme from this year at CES. I'm just looking at the time here, too. I know we've got to run through a few things, and that's why at CES there's so much to talk about. But privacy was a big issue throughout tech over this last year. I mean, certainly further than that, but a lot of blunders this year. And different companies were trying to address it. Apple actually showed up for the first time in, I think it was like 28 years or something along those lines, and to talk about privacy. Facebook making a big push on privacy, and I still think not really knocking it out of the park, as Facebook has been doing. What do you think about the privacy issues?
I think that this is finally companies recognizing that with technology, you have to give a lot of your data to be able to have this service. And that is a very, very scary thought. And even though it's a little bit too late, companies are going, all right, we need to start respecting your data instead of selling it, instead of using it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time you will give 100% and they will only use sort of like 8 to 12% of it. And so they still have all of this stuff that you haven't volunteered. Google has said that if you do address your Google Assistant and you say, hey, Google, that thing that I just spoke about wasn't for you. Or, hey, Google, can you delete the last week of what you've heard? I think that's reverse. I think that you should be saying, hey, Google, you're allowed to keep that. Or this is acceptable, instead of saying what you don't want. Because I would be there going every single day, Google, again, delete. Stop saving all my data. Stop listening to me all the time.
But you raise a good point, because I think certainly there's been several articles ahead of CES that were saying hey, privacy will be a big thing. Of course, and Greg mentioned Apple and Facebook were talking about privacy. Facebook announced a new privacy new update to the privacy settings. Google announced new tweaks to ensure to basically remove your privacy to. Obviously comply with more rules that are regulations out there. But I mean, everyone touts like privacy was going to be a big thing, but realistically, it's not.
No,
I mean,
it's all talk.
I think, and as we continue to talk about recapping CES, that's a mixed victory. Because on one hand, it's we talked about privacy, and especially in light of all the other issues, we needed to talk about more privacy. And as we start to get more tech, and especially IoT, smart homes, and as we're willingly giving this information away in our cars or in our homes or in our daily lives, but nobody's talking about hey, how are you protecting my information? And I think with Google and their Google Assistant announcements, they did bring that to the forefront. Facebook kind of touted it in terms of an embargoed news, but Apple and Facebook they kind of did it as a keynote off the side, which most people won't be attending. So that basically we have to rely on the press, which is totally fine. But I feel like they should have had a little bit more of a presence. I think companies in general need to have more of a presence in talking about these type of things. And you look at, especially with autonomous vehicles, with their platforms, and even Amazon, as they talk about that, we need to be addressing more privacy out in the forefront.
Well, the more that everything's integrated, I mean, that's such a huge issue because all of our devices are going to be talking to each other. All of our data is going to be there, and it's just something that we've really got to figure out. And hopefully, everybody's going to be addressing that more. I know we're out of time. We have more to talk about, but that is always the case when it comes to tech briefs because there's so much to pack in, and especially with CES. And I want to thank everybody who's been following along for the coverage. I will remind you that Tech Briefs is a podcast, so you can subscribe to the podcast. We normally put out one episode every week. This week, there's 3 episodes for you to listen to, and there's always more to follow up on at Digital Trends and at Flipboard. Maud, Ken, thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
And we're going to go to a break because we've got more coverage coming up here for Digital Trends Live in our CES 2020 coverage. Follow along with everything we're talking about at digitaltrends.com/CES. Join us in the chat on whatever platform you're watching on. We want to know your thoughts, your opinions. This is fun. It's interactive. We want to hear what you want to say, and we'll talk to you as well. So stick around. We'll be back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live.